Welcome to Opera San Jose Talks. My name is Larry Hancock, and I'm the General Director of Opera San Jose. And today we're going to talk about Verdi's La Traviata and explore the relationship between Alfredo and his father, Giorgio Germont. I have with me today Pene Pati, who is singing Alfredo, and I have Trevor Neal, who is singing Germont. Pene, I'm going to start with you because you're an exotic flower here, coming all the way from New Zealand.
I had that one before.
Yeah. So, talk to us about growing up in New Zealand, and especially how music became important, and how did you discover you could sing this stuff?
It's been an interesting route. I mean, I was born in Samoa, on the island of Samoa, and I moved to New Zealand with my family when I was about 3. And then I was raised in New Zealand, but I go often back to Samoa and I speak, read, write Samoan. And the thing is, in the islands, music is so embedded in the DNA of people. You're singing at church, you're singing your myths and legends. It's just the way it goes. And the funny thing is, as I grew up in New Zealand, I didn't consider singing a talent for some reason, because I just thought everyone sang. It was just the thing. When someone sang, I was like, okay, that's what you do. It's what I do. So when someone said, oh, you should pursue singing, I thought, that's the worst idea out. Why would I pursue something that everybody's doing? And so I joined the choir, and you couldn't be in the rugby team in the school unless you were in the choir. And that was the initiative
That's brilliant.
And that's what the initiative of the school had. And they said, no, we're gonna integrate these people, all the jocks with all the arts people, and we're gonna see how it's gonna work. And it was amazing. Suddenly you had this amazing rugby choir that was singing on the field before battering each other to pieces. And so as I was pursuing that, I thought, I'm gonna join a choir. The choir director said, you should take on solo singing. I thought, oh my God, why are you guys pulling me down this path I don't want to go down? And until I got to university and someone said, this is not the path for a Pacific man. They will never become an opera singer. You'll never become an opera singer. It's not your thing. And I saw that and I thought, well, I didn't understand why, when it's the reason what we just sing.
Suddenly it becomes interesting when somebody says you can't.
Yeah, exactly. And that is exactly why I pushed forward, because I thought, I'm going to try to prove this guy wrong. I'm just going to see how far I can get and show that it is possible for a kid from the islands to suddenly take over a stage.
Have you heard of Dame Kiri Te Kanawa?
Indeed, I have. Dame Kiri. She was my mentor for quite a few years, actually, and I stayed with her at her house in England for about 2 weeks. It was loads of fun, and in fact, we had one morning where we argued we argued over who could boil the perfect egg.
Oh wow!
Yep. It was intense. She did not want to give up on that. We wasted a whole tray trying to prove each other wrong. But yeah, I love Kiri.
There's a funny story about Miss Te Kanawa and Irene Dallas and Leontine Price. Miss Te Kanawa was on stage performing, and Irene and Miss Price were seated in the audience. And Kiri sang Qu'il Bel Sogno with the pianissimo high tones that nobody was doing. Mm-hmm. But she went up there and just floated these high tones. And Price leaned over to her and she said, damn, now we're all going to have to do that.
It takes the one person to start it, and then everyone's in trouble. There you go.
It's so beautiful. It's so natural. Who would guess that it was never the first intention?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's true.
It's like the E that Violetta sings in this opera, actually.
That high E at the end.
Yeah, that's not written, but it has become performance practice because someone did it. And
like the high C for Manrico.
Exactly,
In Di Quella Pira. Suddenly, Verdi would just say, don't do that. But now, if you can't sing the C at Di Quella Pira, you can't sing the role.
It's true.
Unless, of course, they transpose it down, which we know they
which
occasionally
happens.
do.
Yeah, which happens.
Okay, well, Trevor, you're known to our audiences, but who knows who's listening out there? Probably nobody. But
All four of them.
yes. Well, now that my mother's dead, I don't think anybody listens. But anyway, I know that you're from Texas, and I know you served in the military because I know you were in Egypt not too long ago. Mm-hmm. So how did all this happen to you?
I became interested in the military kind of halfway through high school. My father was in the military, fought in Vietnam, 2 tours to Vietnam, and was very proud of his service. And the older I got, the more he talked about his experiences in the military, and most of them were positive. As we know, Vietnam was not the prettiest war, and he didn't really like to talk about those aspects much. But he always had a sense of pride for what he could give his country in a time where people didn't really want his help. So I felt it was a path that I could also take. So I talked to different recruiters, all while still pursuing this dream of being a jazz musician.
Ah, that's right. I remember that.
Yeah, playing jazz trombone. So I was like, I think I can make both of them work out. So I talked to a National Guard recruiter in my state. He got me all set up on the split option training program, which put me in basic training the summer after my junior year, and my AIT, which is advanced individual training, which is your job training, the summer after my senior year. And my plan was to start at the University of North Texas that fall. Well, that didn't happen. I received deployment papers to Cairo, Egypt, for a term of 9 months. It was a UN peacekeeping mission, which unfortunately, as we know today, wasn't very successful. But I was there on the early end of things. That's kind of as much as I can talk about as far as that goes.
But you were in Egypt.
I was in Egypt.
So talk to me about Egypt.
Egypt is
You saw some pyramids.
I saw lots of pyramids. I saw lots of camels. It is one of the most beautiful countries on this earth. The people are so generous. So generous. Especially for a country that's been through so much and is going through so much. Their spirit is so intoxicating, very intoxicating.
I have never heard that. I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, very, very intoxicating. I would do it again. I would do it again for that aspect alone.
Just to be among the people.
Just to be among the people.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So you started singing. You were a jazz trombonist.
And
obviously, at some point, you got to voice training. Where did that happen?
I was enrolled at the University of North Texas, doing my bachelor's degree in jazz trombone my freshman year. Taking voice lessons because my last year in high school, I enrolled in choir because I wanted to do everything in high school. Who didn't? Well, some people didn't. So I wanted to keep the vocals up. And so I was taking voice lessons with a doctoral student who was a teaching fellow. And midway through the semester, she said, you should really think about studying with a professor. And I was just like, I'm a jazz musician. I'm cool. I'm hip. I don't really do this. This is just for fun. My friends don't even know I do this. So let's just keep it like it is.
Keep it on the down low.
Yeah. Well, she kept twisting my arm. So she kept twisting. So I sang for 2 professors at midterm, and both of them wanted me in their studio. I chose Dr. Jeffrey Snyder, a fantastic Verdi baritone himself. And we had 5 wonderful years together because I partied too much.
That is 5 years instead of 4 years.
Yes,
I get
it. Yes. But again, grateful for my time there, grateful for my experiences there, and Dr. Snyder was actually one who pushed me into opera. It was kind of the same case with going into his studio. I was like, now we're going too far. Opera is not really my thing. I wasn't really familiar with the art form at that point, and I was ignorant to the idea of becoming familiar with the art form. And it wasn't until I did the audition for opera, was offered 2 roles that season, One, actually, from this opera we're doing now, La Traviata, The Doctor, to great acclaim. And I sang Colline in La Boheme.
Well, everybody's laughing about the Doctor in Traviata because he has very few solo moments. Very few solo moments. But he's crucial in the last act.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And so, first impressions of opera doesn't get any better than La Boheme and La Traviata.
Yeah.
So I completely fell in love with the process, the languages, the work it took to get to the final product. And I switched my major.
Every successful singer I have ever met loves to practice.
Yeah.
Loves to vocalize, loves to develop the instrument, and that becomes the chief interest.
Yeah.
I just don't know of a single successful singer that I've ever known who wasn't absolutely fascinated with that process. Because you're manipulating. So I ended up having to sing because of my scholarship. I entered university as a piano major, and that was even on a fluke. I had no intention of doing anything like that. I was at state contest, the public school music contests, and I entered because I was in competition with this girl who made fun of me because I wanted to study piano. So I studied piano really hard for 2 years because I was going to beat her at contest. And so the two of us, we went all the way to state contest, but I made more superiors than she did, and I went as a singer and a pianist. But the piano judge happened to be the dean of a school of music. And he said that I should come to his university. And then I said, I can't talk about this because in 5 minutes I have to be at the vocal competition. I don't know what room that is. And he said, it's right through this adjoining door. And we went through together, and he heard my vocal competition. And when I came off the stage, he literally grabbed my lapels and pressed my back against the wall and told me, I must come to Stetson University. You must do this. I thought he was insane. I ended up going to Stetson University. But the scholarship was that while I was allowed to study piano, where I'd only really had 2 real serious years, I had to study also singing. And then they forced the issue at the end of my freshman year and insisted that I become a voice major. I remember sitting in the back of the theater listening to everybody up there singing The Elixir of Love, where I was going to be in the chorus, and thinking, 18-year-old kid. I just thought it was ridiculous that they wanted me to do this. I thought Andy Williams was just as good as it got. So this opera thing was just completely off the wall. But then we did Madame Butterfly.
Yeah.
And I was Goro, and that took it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Butterfly. Puccini is good for grabbing you
Oh,
and
I'm
making
telling
you
you.
pay attention.
There's nothing like
Oh, yeah.
Puccini and
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Traviata. Verdi, obviously, one of the 2 apexes of opera. Wagner and Verdi, the 2 most accomplished, most influential. Wagner, of course, wins the influence because he completely wrecks music for a whole century.
Most definitely.
But I mean, it's not that it doesn't have beauty in it. It certainly does. It's just that you have to take no dose. Yeah, I think Rossini sort of wrapped it up best about the discussion of Wagner. But we just did a Wagner opera, and it was wonderful all the way through.
It was fantastic.
Because it's short.
It's short. He hits the points. It's Italianate.
Yeah.
All these great things.
Well, there's sections. I mean, Eric, it sounds like Bellini.
Oh, yeah.
Really. Every time Eric opens his mouth, you think, he stole that from Bellini. It just doesn't feel like Wagner at all. He's very, very young. He's only 29 when he wrote that. So, but anyway, we have this Verdi guy, a long life, a lot of operas, like 29, 27 operas, depending on who counts, right? And then we have Traviata. Now, there was this wonderful year, or 3 years, I guess, where Verdi turns out Rigoletto, Trovatore, and Traviata. And for me, that's just the watershed of Italian opera.
Oh, yeah.
And Verdi himself said, not long after he wrote this Traviata, he said, well, if I were going to look back as a professional and evaluate my work, I would have to say that Rigoletto is the best thing that I've written. He says, But if I were a ticket buyer, it would be Traviata.
Yeah.
Because the ticket buyers still like
That's a good way to put
Traviata.
it.
Yep.
That's a good way to put it.
Ticket buyers still like it. I've always said that Americans really like operas where the girl dies and the guy is really sorry.
You know, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
They like those. They like Carmen.
Yeah.
They like Butterfly. They like Traviata. They like Bohème.
Yeah.
The girl dies, the guy's really sorry. But when the guy dies and the girl is really sorry, nobody gives a damn.
No one comes. No one shows up.
Werther, who cares? Die. She'll find another guy. She'll be okay. Nobody cares. So the guy dies. So anyway, so here we have this father-son problem, and we have the 19th century. It's the Victorian era. The French, I don't think, ever embraced the Victorian era, but I think the Victorian era was very two-sided. We expected a certain behavior in public and a very different behavior in private, and especially for men in the upper classes. Brothels were normal.
Yes.
And they used mistresses as wives used mistresses as birth control. They would decide they'd had as many children as they intended to have and tell their husband, I hope you like this one because he's your last, which is giving him permission, number one, to sleep in his own room from now on, and number two, to go on the other side of town and rent an apartment and keep a mistress. Go bother her. Leave me alone. And by the way, then she would have her boyfriend. But for all public purposes, none of that was going on.
Yeah.
So they called it the half world, the demi-monde, right?
Yep.
And so we have, and the setup here is a particularly beautiful and successful courtesan, the first of the grand horizontals. And the Alfredo, who has no money, they're not rich people. No. They're good, solid, middle-class people. They're not rich people. Suddenly Alfredo has fallen in love with a very expensive woman, and she doesn't know what love is. But Papa has some thoughts about this. And you guys are at complete crossed swords here. Even at the entrance in the last act. When you come in the last act, Germont, Alfredo is not ready to see your face. So how do you work this out? I mean, it's all there in the score for me. If you just do what Verdi has written in,
yes, most definitely.
There's not a whole lot of having to fuss about it. You just go out there and do it. But Pene, first of all, what in the world does Alfredo think he's going to manage to successfully move in on this adorable woman?
I honestly don't think that has even crossed his mind.
Oh,
I think he's so naive about
he doesn't know he has to bring something to the table.
I think he's so naive about that. Because remember, in the second part, after his aria, after just singing about the glories of having her love, and then Nina walks in and he's like, totally oblivious that she was in Paris paying off the bills. It's
he's a real ingenue, isn't he?
Yeah. See, he doesn't even understand that world. He's
that
just
somebody
like,
has to pay the rent.
Yeah. Also, like he's like, I'm going in for love, and which is of course why Violetta is so against it, because it's just not what a courtesan does. I mean, if a courtesan falls in love, she's essentially no longer a courtesan, and for him, he's like, I'm just going to go in and steal her right off her feet, and it's all going to be great. And then he's like, oh no, I forgot I had to pay the bills. I don't know how to pay the bills. So I think with that image alone, it shows his naivety in the whole situation. He's just a man in love and doesn't understand the society at the time.
He's a very young man in love. How old do you think he is?
Oh, well... The actual, who was it based off? Marie Duplessis?
Well, yes.
Wasn't she quite?
She's already dead at 23.
Yeah, she's 23.
Very young.
So I would assume he's not far off. I honestly wouldn't.
Between 18 and 20.
Yeah.
Still very young. Maybe he's even in Paris to go to the Sorbonne. I don't know why he's even in Paris. He's finishing school.
Experiencing... No, he wouldn't be experiencing life in
He's
Paris.
experiencing the wrong side of life in Paris for a kid from the middle class.
Yeah.
That he's in the heady circle. He's made some friends somehow. He's in this very heady circle. He goes to the opera. He goes to theater. So they're not poor.
No.
These are not poor people. And he has all the clothes and everything he needs to do it. Puccini didn't have.
Yeah.
Verdi did have. When Verdi goes to Milan, he has a guy who's paying for everything. So he had his top hat and his white tie and his tails and his white gloves and everything so that he could walk into the great salons with the countesses and the marquise of Milan, and he could fit right in and make all the kind of job connections you possibly need.
Yeah.
Whereas poor Puccini was really dirt poor. He didn't have enough money to eat food. 2 meals a day, and one of them was beans and one of them was bread. So he was really suffering. That's why La Bohème rings with such clarity, because he knew some of those scenes in Bohème literally were from that life.
Yeah.
But Verdi didn't know about that. He always had somebody picking up the bills because he was talented and he just happened to make good friends.
Yeah.
Smart man.
Yeah. Lucky.
Very lucky. Yeah.
Like the Greeks. The Greeks always thought you were rich because of luck. And it was never your fault that you weren't rich. So there was no shame in being poor.
That is a beautiful thing.
That's a good thing.
Wow, that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. The Greeks really had a better handle on many things than we've got. We've learned a lot from them, but not enough, huh? So anyway, you're a kid in Paris in the height of the 19th century. That's Napoleon III. It's everybody seems rich, and you're in the middle of it and fall in love with the most beautiful woman in Paris. Well, and made it for a while.
Yep.
Of course, we know this is a fiction, even though Violetta is really based on Rose Alphonsine Plessis, who changes her name to Marie when she becomes a prostitute. That's a whole different story. I'll wait till I have a Violetta here. We'll go into the life of... I have visited her grave.
Oh, wow.
She's buried in Montmartre. And she married a count.
Yeah.
But it was only... They really never lived together as husband and wife. But she was a wild woman. And she's in Verdi's opera, butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. But the real character smoked cigars and made rude jokes, and had a dresser in her bedroom with 7 drawers, or was it 5 drawers, for each of her 5 lovers. They threw in together to have this thing built so they could each of them have a drawer in her bedroom so that they could have a change of clothes when they came to visit.
Oh.
So she was not exactly sweetness and light. And she lived wildly extravagantly, but mostly got paid for. So here you are, Papa, with a child in the city who is living openly. That's the problem, is Alfredo lives openly with a woman who is a known prostitute. And it's messing up your family. What's going on?
You know, when I first thought about the character of Germont and tried to get down to the root of why he is trying to break up Alfredo and the truth behind it, I found that Germont, in my interpretation, is actually just a selfish, self-centered SOB who uses his children to get what he wants. You know, when you read the libretto, you see that he talks about the second child, the daughter, who is set to marry someone who is one class level above them. And I believe that he needs Alfredo to come back home and leave this prostitute to her prostituting, not to tarnish the family name.
Sure.
To assure that the daughter's marriage continues on so he can be elevated.
There you go.
I don't believe that he actually cares about either one of his children. I believe everything is completely selfish. And it's not until the end that he realizes that he just completely pulled down his pants and crapped over everything.
Made a mess.
Yeah, made a mess, and he does feel regret for that, because not only did he ruin the relationship with his 2 children, but also this beautiful girl died that he came to really adore.
That she was going to die, but she didn't have to die in such misery.
Exactly.
And in such absolute poverty.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, marriage was never going to happen between the 2 of them. That's clear pretty much all the way through. Courtesan did not marry. It was just not socially possible, I guess. Although she does in real life, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She marries a count.
Yes.
She doesn't just marry, she marries a count. So this can be done. That's a curious thing. That, of course, a count is above social expectation. He can do what he wants to. It's the middle class that's trapped.
Yeah.
The poor have freedom. The rich have freedom. The middle class are trapped.
Yeah.
And that's true worldwide, I think.
And I think that's what's all behind Germont's thinking, in his actions especially. He comes at both Violetta in the scene with her, and also in this aria with his son, both in a very conniving, manipulative fashion.
Oh, his Di Provenza.
His Di Provenza is it's I'm gonna tell my son, don't you remember all these things? You don't know how beautiful it is. Don't you wish you can come back to that?
The sunlight on the water.
The sunlight on the water. Come on back, son. Come on back. It's all manipulative.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure that there's more than one way to look at it, but I agree with you. He's worried about the family. He's worried about the daughter making the correct marriage. He's worried about keeping up the established.
Yeah.
We're good, solid middle class people, and we're going to stay that way.
Yeah.
And if you suffer for it, well, guess what? So did I.
Yeah.
So, because it's hard to maintain those things. Because I think the natural inclination of a lot of people, men and women alike, is to live a very different life than the middle class mores dictate. We all want more freedom than we're given by society. I grew up in the Deep South with churches everywhere. Well, actually, there was only 2 churches, one on either side of the river, because it was a tiny little village. There were not even 2,000 people where I grew up. And there were horses and cattle and orange groves, and not much more. And that was very restrictive. There were 2 kinds of people in that town: those who went to the church and those who went to the bar. And they didn't commingle.
Yeah.
And was it that way also where you grew up?
No, well, in Samoa, definitely it's very religious. There's churches nearly everywhere. But in New Zealand, it's more, I don't think it was to that extent. I think it's more
a freer society.
Yeah, freer society. Yeah.
And in Texas, where you grew up, did you grow up among Baptists like I did?
My parents were definitely Baptist, and their parents were Baptist. And I grew up going to Baptist church. Doesn't mean I paid attention all the time, but I definitely grew up going to Baptist church. It wasn't really till I got to college that I explored non-denominational, and so that's why I consider myself now. I'm a very spiritual person, but I don't prescribe to a certain denomination.
I'm going to recommend a book to you. Easy to remember, God. G-O-D. And it'll be the only one out there with that title.
Good.
It's Reza Aslan's book. And I've been discovering a whole bunch of books about religion recently, in the past year or so. I've read so many now. I've just finished *Sapiens*. I've just finished *Developing Brains, Emerging Gods*. There are all these books out there that are really exploring what religion has done in the world. And right now I'm reading *The Closing of the Western Mind*. It's the second book with that title. There was one way back in the 50s. But this is a new book. And it's carefully studying Greek philosophy and the Jewish way of life and what that was all about and all these various things and how they came together into Christianity and how Plato and Aristotle had huge effects on the development of early Christianity because they were the dominant philosophies, and then how it all got calcified and solidified by the 4th century. And I don't know beyond that, because that's where I am in the book right now. So, but anyway, it's amazing at the explorations that are happening with religion out there today.
Yeah.
Things that could not have been said when I was a child.
Yeah.
To say that all religion is fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
You could not have said that. You couldn't have published that book when I was a child.
You couldn't say that when I was a child. So.
Yeah.
But these people say, and this is what they imagined.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how they imagined it. And this is what Origen imagined. This is what that guy imagined. And this is how they tried to, get Plato to work with the Jewish God. And all these explanations of how they were trying to work it out and who was doing the work. And they were really just reasoning. They were sitting down and reasoning. Like much later in the I think the late 19th or early 20th century, a pope decided that because the Bible says that the virgin was without sin, and because of the doctrine of original sin, therefore she had to be immaculately conceived also. Otherwise she could not have been without sin. She would have had original sin. So they just use reason. They read something and reason it out and said, well, this must be true. And then that becomes what's true, if enough people hear it and choose to believe it. Anyway, these are interesting books, and you'll love to read God. It's short, by the way. You'll love to read it. It's a fun book. Gosh, we got sideways here. Well, let's talk about the music. Alfredo has some... We've cut the cabaletta.
Yes, it's been cut in half, yeah.
So you get a bit of it.
Yeah.
Because that's what is the cabaletta? It's a big, loud, showy piece of music, and it usually follows a slow aria. And almost always Alfredo's cabaletta is cut. So I'm glad we get to have part of that at least.
Yeah.
So, and I think you have one piece that they've cut of yours. Haven't they, Trevor?
Yes, my cabaletta as well.
It's
entirely gone.
Yeah, and which is, it's starting to make its way back into productions I've seen recently, but for a while, a lot of people were cutting it. No one was doing the cabaletta. I'll learn it one day. But singing it after that aria, man.
Well, that is the difficulty, isn't it?
That's the difficulty.
That's how singers proved their mettle.
Most definitely.
Was to sing these long, difficult arias and then sing a fast, hard, high piece right behind it.
Oh, yeah.
And with Di Provenza, it's already high.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been singing very high for a long time, and now you're going to sing also a high cabaletta after that. Sure. Violetta, on the other hand, she's stuck.
No choice.
She has no choice. She has to sing.
She has to finish the act.
Yeah.
She has to bring down a curtain, so she has to sing her cabaletta. Well, that was it. Well, they were showpieces, right? I mean, the whole idea in the 19th century, 18th century sort of, but in the 19th century, it got to be, you had to be a real accomplished, technically accomplished artist. It wasn't just artistry. It was artistry with a lot of technique in it. And that became the rule for a long time. Mm-hmm. And somehow I guess we've decided that what's really important is the drama itself, not the music itself.
Yeah, I think it works both ways in a sense that back in the time when they sang the full things, it was... I feel like there wasn't that much drama instilled into the opera itself. It was more musically dramatic.
Exactly.
That the singer just stood there and sung. And although that was amazing in itself, I think what makes it more difficult now that I think people can do the cabaletta, and I think people can do longer phrases. But one, attention spans have decreased a lot, and two, we're made to do other more dramatic things on stage that actually permit you from trying to sing the cabaletta. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get to a point where you're kind of like on your knees and you're like, well, how the hell am I going to sing this cabaletta? If they planted you on the spot and said, you just stand there and you sing.
Oh, man.
Then you can be like, okay, fine. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I can do that. But some now you see you're upside down or...
We try to be very careful with people because if the singer isn't comfortable, how is the audience going to be comfortable?
Absolutely.
And especially up close and personal, like the California is only 1,200 seats, and that includes the wheelchair and companion seats, right? So it's really about 1,000-seat house, and you sense everything that the singer is going through. In our hall, it is very intimate. And
no bad seat.
Yeah,
not
that's
a bad
true.
Seat. Not a bad seat.
And the sound is glorious
everywhere.
It's a great theater.
Not a
it
bad
really
seat.
is.
Yeah, it's really pretty to look at too. So that doesn't hurt either. So yeah, I love the theater. But at any rate, when it comes time to have anybody a little bit unsure of of their confidence level while they're on stage, that's pretty clear to the audience.
Yeah.
They can sense that. And I think in a great big house, you don't really get it. Because I've gone to the Met many times and seen artists who really probably should have had somebody else go on.
Yeah.
And they go out there anyway. And you don't really get this sense of discomfort. You just get this sense of, well, that's not really very nicely sung. And then you think, that person's not well. You can't be this far along and sing like that, on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different experience. But then again, careers are made and then they last. And sometimes they last longer than they perhaps should have because audiences love the person.
Yeah. Case in point, Maestro Domingo. He still has a gorgeous instrument. He could have retired 20 years ago.
Oh, he's so rich. Yes, he could retire.
People love to go see him on stage. He brings a lot to a production.
Yeah.
So that's just one case in point.
Yep.
People love to see a legend.
I missed Maria Callas's farewell concert in New York. I was standing outside Carnegie Hall looking at the sign while she was inside Carnegie Hall singing the farewell.
So you were there.
Technically, you could say you were there.
I was just a kid, right? And was visiting New York for my first trip to New York and I didn't know where Carnegie Hall was. I was walking by and so, what's going on? Maria Callas, farewell recital. Oh my! Here I am on the sidewalk. Oh well. That's when I figured out I would love to live in New York if I were rich.
I think everyone would think.
I lived there for 3 years, and I absolutely love it. I would go back if I had more money.
Yeah.
Well, that's the trick, because it's like a kid outside the candy shop.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's so many things you can do, experience, see.
Oh yeah. And I lived in Brooklyn. I lived in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, which is like, at that time was on the front end of gentrification, so it wasn't the greatest neighborhood. And I mean, I was still, well, I guess, no, you guys go ahead and go out. I'm going to cook tonight.
Yeah, sure. I do that right now.
Yeah.
And I hate to cook. So, but at any rate, yeah. So anyway, New York is a lot of fun. I was just in London this past Christmas. These tours happen, and I get invited to go on these tours. I don't know why, but I always say yes. Yeah, I'll go to London for Christmas. And next year we're going to Paris for Christmas.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. We've discovered it's wonderful to fly on Christmas Day because the airports are empty.
Yeah.
The flights are full, but the airports are empty.
Yeah.
So that's really very nice, getting through security and all that stuff, just breezing right through major international airports. Heathrow was nothing. Getting out of Heathrow Airport last Christmas was nothing. I mean, really, there were like 6 of us going through passport control. It was crazy. But at any rate, and I have found that in Europe, Christmas is not all that cold. After Christmas, it's really cold.
Yeah.
But Christmas is not all that cold. So, and I often go to Paris in December. So next year it'll be Paris. So I'm looking forward to that. And once again, there's so much. I mean, you were surrounded by the most wonderful artists performing, 17 halls filled with spectacular things going on. And if you're poor, I just as soon live in the countryside. Because there's so many, how you say, compromises in a city. Because mostly what you're looking at is not very, very beautiful to see. Whereas in the countryside, it is. And there's the jostling and just the general inconvenience of being in the city. there's unpleasantness there. On the other hand, where else are you going to go that you'll have 17 choices that night? So if you're rich, why would you live anywhere else? You just live high.
Just live above everyone.
Above everyone.
That's right. Live
Look
someplace
down.
high. Okay. Well, here we all are, just about to get ready to go into the theater. Load-in was yesterday.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so the scenery, they're breaking down the scenery now that's going to go over today. Lighting, yesterday was lighting, and tomorrow will be scenery. And then the next day after that will be lighting, and then we start the Q to Q, and then we have tech rehearsals. So that's all coming up. You're about to have your Sitzprobes soon. That's good. How are we working this out with two different Germonts? Are we having two different Sitzprobes?
Good question.
Two Germonts and
no
two
clue.
Alfredi.
Have to talk to the maestro about that.
I have a feeling you'll be switching out.
Most likely. Malcolm, you take Act 2, and I'll do Act 3.
And Malcolm McKenzie is the other Germont. And who is our other Alfredo? Oh, then Dane is singing the other Alfredo. And I'm so pleased that we have 6 performances so we can sort of divvy things out a little bit and have that many more singers present. You know, we used to have 8 members of the resident company, and they sang all the leading roles.
Wow.
4 in each cast. So everything was double cast. So now we have just one cast normally, but with a whole cast of covers. But then when we realize that the covers are so fine that we think, no, the cover's going to have to go on.
Yeah.
We have to send the cover out because they need this on their resume. So that's why we work it out that way, because they prove to be brilliant.
You know what? I think it's a good method to go by. There's companies who just fully do the run and then the covers don't get a show. It's kind of a bit sad because sometimes the covers are really good. Then you at least want to be like, just give them one show. I mean, so you can justify them being there covering. You know?
Our covers do get one run with an audience and orchestra and fully costumed. That's standard.
You see, now that's I like
unheard
that.
of in the world. But we're about helping singers. That's what we're here for. Is to help singers. So I want all the covers to get a live performance in front of an audience with the conductor and the orchestra and in full costume and makeup.
That's great. It's a great idea.
It's a stupid expense. But I also want to know that when the cover walks out because somebody fell down the stairs,
they're absolutely
they can
ready.
sing the role.
Most definitely.
It's terribly important to me.
Yeah, most definitely.
So I don't want people to have a bad time. Well, anyway, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming in. We've chatted almost a whole hour.
Wow. I didn't even
I know, these fly by. Okay, guys, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.